What?
instead of a hymn.
40?
100. Or 40.
Wait, what is 40 and what's number?
We've taken quite a few of Austine's already. Let's, you want to have
No one speaks up fast
Say
enough.
100.
That's right,
Hannah?
that's right. You're fast on
That's
the.
Christmas. How about 84?
Christmas?
Yeah. 100.
100. Yeah.
Yeah, 100's good.
84.
Hey, sing Christmas.
What in this makes it look like Christmas?
I'm not
Just
supposed
because
to
you
sing
sing it
Christmas
during
song.
Christmas time?
Hold on.
Well, I'm singing all the
You
time.
got a Christmas song this morning?
Every day's Christmas.
If we hurry, we can do two.
What makes it Christmas?
Short.
All right, very good. Oh, come on, you fool.
Oh,
That really is a neat song, isn't it? From a what, 18th century Latin hymn?
Holiday.
Okay, wonder what the history is.
When was Christmas established in the
Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant, oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels, so come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing choirs of angels, sing in exaltation, sing all ye bright hosts of heaven above. Glory to God, all glory in the highest. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Beautiful hymn, probably my favorite Christmas hymn, and neat hymn this morning to sort of tack a little bit like a sailboat. We're talking about apologetics and all these isms and stuff. For what purpose? To invite people to come and go to Christ. And, so good to focus on the Savior to start off. Okay. Was there a second hymn? And then we have a couple more days left.
84?
84, number 84.
84. All right, so ready? 84. Come thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art. Oh, wait a minute, I messed up, sorry. Let's start again. You sing the second line in the first stanza. Okay. Music people were gasping for air in the background. Okay. Try it again. Come thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. From our fears and sins release us, let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art. Dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Wesley. All right. Before we started this morning, I sent to you, oh, you have it on your internet, don't you? The quote by G.K. Chesterton. Do you remember that? A one-page sheet? Okay.
Yes.
Do you have that handy? Is that with you this morning? Okay. I want you to pull that out for the one video that we're going to, the next video we're going to watch in just a few minutes. So if you have it on your internet, I guess you have to pull it up. If you have it in your notebook, maybe you can get it and be ready to read it. Okay? All right. I think yesterday we ended with humanism and we were going to go to secularism. So let's do a few more of these isms. Secularism, now that was covered very well with Ravi yesterday. The process by which the church has lost social significance. That's the effect of it. Now we're going to use this definition. That's the effect of it, or the process by which. That's the loss of social significance is the effect of secularism. Secularism is the result of turning away from God and assuming that everything is without God's influence. That's another way we could put it. Use this one for the final exam, but secularization is the process of taking a society away from God and from religious grounding. So it is the result of materialism / humanism / naturalism / postmodernism / It's the result of a culture that gets away from God. And we saw yesterday some pretty sad things in that. Secularism brings about the loss of shame. Shame brings about the loss of love. And he's going to cover more of those kinds of sequential thinkings for us today. Neo-orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is a term that we use here at the school. I started using this maybe 10, 12 years ago to refer to where I hope that I am in theology, to be orthodox, to be correct. The breakaway of the Orthodox Church, remember 1054 AD, the split between in the Catholic Church, the Universal Church, then you have the Roman side, the Roman Catholic Church, and you have the Greek Orthodox Church. So there you have the split that took place there 1,000 years ago or so. And they chose the word is chosen for that is Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox Church. Obviously, I don't personally find the Greek Orthodox Church that orthodox. In those days, they found themselves more orthodox in comparison to the Roman Church. And so there was a split. And so the word orthodoxy to Protestants got, I think, a bad rap for a long time, and nobody used that word to refer to us. As time goes on, we all pick new words to refer to us, and one word that was used in the after modernism and then postmodernism was the word fundamentalism. But fundamentalism is getting a bad rap too today, isn't it? How many of you came from a fundamentalistic church? Let me see your hands. Okay. Now, I'm not accusing you of anything wrong, but why would Pastor Don move away from the word fundamentalism? Okay, to be fundamental. Well, perhaps two reasons. One, and Alina didn't put her hand up, right? Alina, I pronounce your name wrong all the time, didn't I? I put an A on the end. Did you put your hand up? Okay. So don't throw me away. Okay. Today, fundamentalism is often referred to a church that might be legalistic. Okay. And so what is legalism? You know, that's a strange word, isn't it? Everybody accuses everybody else of being legalistic. Okay, as soon as you set down a rule or guideline, you're legalistic. That's not legalism. Okay, legalism by its definition would be that you, by the law, get to heaven. By doing works, you get to heaven. And so that word's been misused too. But there's another reason too, and that is because of the use of that term, for example, by ISIS, and by the Muslims, fundamentalists. And so I think you can't stop that. It's on the news every day. The secular world is using that all day to refer to weirdos who, Christians are good people, but then there's the fundamentalists who are like the Muslims who kill people if you don't join their group. So for that reason, also, I've stopped using the word fundamentalism or fundamental to refer to myself because of its association with the Muslim world. Okay, you can say, well, let them get their own word. Well, yeah, you can, but they're not. And the secular world and the TV and et cetera is using that word. So I like the word orthodox. Orthodox. That our theology is orthodox. It is straightforward. It is true to form, and etc. So that's just me. All right. If you have any questions about that, talk to me later. But now the word neo-orthodox or neo-orthodoxy was brought about by Karl Barth, and he was a Swiss theologian. He lived in between the two world wars. He was alive when the Second World War broke out. And the First World War was a war to end all wars. And then these liberals and the modernists, they thought, wow, we're going to enter a time of peace. You know what they actually thought? They actually thought that that was the war to end all wars, and it worked, and because it was so horrific and stupid and horrific. And you know, many men lost their lives, and then people. And they used gas warfare. I still remember as a little boy, there was a man who lived in our town who had been gassed during the war, and he was never right, mentally again. And he was a victim of the war. And it was such a horrific time. Second World War overshadows it because it was worse. But everybody thought it was going to end all wars, and so what was the natural outcome of that? Oh, now where's peace? And wars are over now. And you see, that's evolution influence. We're getting better, more sophisticated. And the theology, you know, we're going to find truth now, etc. Then the Second World War broke out. And it was very discouraging to a lot of people who held that view that there were no more wars. You can imagine. And Karl Barth was one of those. And so what he did was, he said, you know, the liberalism was saying there's no word from God, and God is not around, and etc. And the existentialists try and find truth there. And there's different forms that we've talked about already. But one thing, what he tried to do was, he started thinking, there's got to be some hope here, some truth here. Well, there is a God, and God can break through when he chooses to use a word from his book. Okay. So it was an orthodoxy in a sense. He went neo-orthodox in the right direction, but it really was only a baby step, wasn't it? Because true good theology of Protestantism is that the whole book is true, and God speaks to us through this book. Spirit of God illuminates this book to us. He was saying that God can choose a word, and we can get an experience or come through the existentialism. We can get a truth from God when he breaks through the word. And as I pointed out earlier, I used the word comic book. You know, he could use a comic book. God could use that, or an encyclopedia, or an outdoor life, or a Field and Stream magazine, or a Better Home, Home and Journal, whatever they're called. I don't know what they call that. I'm not a sissy. Anyway, I'm just so, but God could use any word to break through. Well, boy, what door does that open? My goodness, that links then existentialism with anything you assume then through your experience is God speaking to you. Okay, so it turns out to be bad. But it did go in the right direction. Separates faith from the real world. Word is word when God speaks. The word, capital W, becomes the word of God when he speaks through it. So that's neo-orthodoxy. I want you to be able to understand that you're going to need to know something there to link it to, I think, multiple choice somewhere. Now, polarization is our next study that he's going to take us to. He's going to talk to us about polarization. Polarization is the effect of secularization. The society becomes, let me back up. Christianity becomes polarized from the secular society. In a sense, sometimes the society becomes polarized too. There's tremendous polarization even in our country today, isn't there? There really is. Now, it may sound noble to say we're tolerant and we accept all views. Okay. But you can't live in that world. Think about this. You can't live in that world. So now you're going to be insulted with all the views that you say you're tolerant of. Okay? And you're going to be intolerant, non-tolerant of those who disagree with you, like Christians, saying that every view is equally right. And that's going to cause anger and frustration and suppression of truth and polarization. So polarization takes place because we're human beings. And the statement of relativism to absolutism is the official one that he's going to use for us. And he's going to explain this to us, a wonderful discussion. The statement, we're going to play it several times for you in class. Back it up, go ahead, back it up, go ahead. The statement of relativism, that everything's relative, and out of that comes a statement to Christians, for example, absolutists, that you must not contradict relativism. You don't have a right to contradict relativism. So those of us, none of us, in culture, who would be relativists, everything's relative, relativity in thought and truth, we say to the absolutist, the Christian who says there is a God who is immutable and therefore can't change. So there's absolutes. That is a statement of relativism to absolutism that you must not, dare not, cannot, don't you dare contradict relativism. Okay. All right, monism. Monism is you don't hear about this one very much. It's a simple statement that all is one. It goes to a unity statement to the extent that it's destructive to the concept of the Trinity. We want a unity worldview, don't we as Christians want unity to our worldview? Of course we do. We don't want loose edges or bunny trails that don't go anywhere. But monism then perhaps might influence a tremendous movement. Now somebody can check me on this, but I'm going to give this to you now so you can put it in your notes. That everything is one. It's a desire to bring about oneness through world thought. And I think of the Unity Church. Okay, there's another word for it. My mind is. They're all over the East Coast, especially in New England.
Unitarian?
Unitarian, thank you. Unitarian. And it turns out to be a philosophical statement, not a desire to know the one true God. Okay. Now, here's another theme that we're going to try and get back to Schaeffer on if we have time. And this is an important one. It's on the final exam, too. Schaeffer, in his videos, in his last videos, takes us through the process to see that mankind came to a point where he stopped looking for truth in reason and then tried to find truth in non-reason. Then the movie we didn't see, he shows it in art and music. How music became the 12-tone scores. It was non-resolution music. And actually computer music was popular for a while, which was programmed to be totally chaotic, because these people doing this were trying to show their worldview. Evolution, there's no right or wrong, everything's relative, etc. And the tremendous illustrations of that Schaeffer gives. In his last two, he is pretty effective, and I think we're going to try and see those, because I want you to see them. He gets to the point where he says, okay, what is the outcome? What's the result of a whole culture, especially the youth culture? That's where it really started. Although it was led by old gray-hair men. Okay, remember I told you that it's often the case that the thinkers, the avant-garde people, are 50 years ahead, thinking these wildly crazy thoughts, trying to find truth in reality. And then they affect the whole culture, many times the youth, almost like a Pied Piper. And so, coming out of California, New York, and other places, came this idea that okay, if we're going to try to find truth in non-reason, and you all know about Haight-Ashbury, you all know about Woodstock, and there was these were taking place in the United States and in England, for example, which were a public exhibition of non-reason. Public exhibition of non-reason. And it got pretty bad. They got pretty bad. Ravi's going to talk a little bit about them too. And I'm going to show him to you. He's very discreet because there was nudity to those things and drugs. And at one of them, they hired, I think Ravi will mention it, they hired the Hells Angels motorcycle group to police the thing. And it got pretty ugly and they actually killed somebody. There was no law and order. The police didn't even attempt to bring about order. There were so many kids, and they turned out poorly. So, look, here's a culture, segment of culture, throwing away the Moors, the establishment was the word used in the 60s. We heard that again in the recent election, didn't we? The establishment in Washington. And many think that Trump won because of the bad feelings up here in the flyover part of the country, especially towards the establishment of Washington. They get there and they just sort of build their own little kingdoms, and they're not listening to the people. And I feel that way, but I still feel that way, and I'm really upset still even this morning at the government in Washington. But I don't want to get into that. They haven't listened to us. They're not listening to us. That's what it appears to be. Anyway, here you have this whole youth culture, thinkers and desires. And let me back up a little bit. This may come out in the movies, but in case we don't get to this, which I hope we will, you went from First World War to end all wars. Then you have these foggy, stupid stuff happening from the pulpit. God is dead, influenced by evolution, Nietzsche and others. Theologians saying this, liberal, they were called liberals. That was a term dealing with those who had a theory that God was dead and you can't get any truth from the Bible, from Christianity, from God. And then the modernists would come along, well, maybe we can get truth from science. Okay? And that didn't answer their souls' yearning. To 1919s, 1920s, 1930s. And then, well, if that doesn't work, now we enter the age of non-reason. Maybe we can find truth from being just trying to divorce our minds, trying to get rid of logic, actually trying to close out logic, and just let anything come in that comes in. Okay? And maybe we can find reality and purpose there. And that includes the idea we're going to look at of postmodernism, in which there is no truth at all. Maybe there is no truth, and now we're going to find purpose in meaning, which is really saying what? We're going to find truth for ourselves. We're going to redefine truth. It's not universal truth. It's not non-contradictory truth, or it's always true at the same place in the same sense, universally. But now we're going to find purpose for ourselves, individually, with non-truth. And then Schaeffer says, very wise, he was a genius at this. He analyzes society and says, you know what happened next? Since people couldn't find truth, they got despondent. They got despondent. Just like their parents, they tried to find meaning and purpose, but now they say there's no truth, and they end up in a circle. That's Schaeffer's illustration. They end up in a circle just a notch lower. A notch lower. And this idea of personal police and influence, he invented, I think he invented this, maybe he quotes someone else, but I think Schaeffer invented this, and it's a pretty popular phrase today. What they were left with was a despair and lack of hope and discouragement, because non-reason didn't give them meaning and purpose either. And so all they were left with was, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Who cares? Okay. Apathy. Apathy. Right? And all you're left with is some apathy as personal peace and influence. Don't bother me, I won't bother you. Don't tread on me, I won't tread on you. Just give me what I need and want, influence. Okay? And my own personal space. And just I'll sort of veg in that. And it's a very sad commentary on the culture that came out of the 1960s, out of the sexual revolution, out of the drug revolution, out of the hippie movement. We call it the hippie movement, the flower people in California, etc. Because it is a very sad time. And you've already heard, if you haven't heard it yet, you will. Well, I'll give it to you now, because it may be in the movie that I'm not going to show you. But it has to do with this idea that these renegades, these lawless hippies, and coming out of Berkeley, and crazy ideas, a lot of communist ideas. And that's the part I want you to see. Because communism is a Christian heresy. It's not like Buddhism, which is a counterfeit, okay, and Hinduism. But communism is a Christian heresy. And there were young people in California, very sincere, saying, we're gonna rebel against everything because we need to care and love for each other. We want meaning and purpose. Well, that's a Christian virtue. And it was a fascinating time. And all this rebellion was taking place. And we thought, you know, most of the adult world would think, well, it finally died down. There was a riot at Kent State. One student was killed by the National Guard. There were riots all over the United States. It was a very serious time. Rebellion of the youth against the old people, which were the establishment. And by the way, let me back up a little bit. The establishment included the ideas that came off of the Second World War. The Second World War was horrific, and we did not know if we were going to win, honestly. It wasn't like you see in the movies today, wow, look what we did to them, we really showed them. No. Hitler had a tremendous advantage. He was taking over everything. He was next going after England, and his scope, of course, was the United States. When he made alliances with Italy, Mussolini, and alliances, it happens just for the circumstance, with Japan, now all of a sudden the United States is fighting 2 wars at the same time. Actually 3 wars with Italy. So my uncle was in Italy, and we were fighting the Italians, the Latins, and they were in league with Germany, and Germany, of course, he had his sights on the fact that we'll let them do all the conquering and we'll take over them. And then you're fighting the Japanese with a totally different kind of warfare. The Germans were bad in the sense of not holding the Geneva Convention, but the prisoner of war camps in Japan were absolutely horrific. And we were actually fighting 3 wars. There were food stamps. I remember those as a boy. Even after the war, there were still food stamps, I guess for a period of time. And you couldn't get sugar, you couldn't get tires for your car. You had to have so many stamps to be able to get a tire because everything was rationed. There were ration stamps for meat, sugar, things like that. All automobile plants in Detroit shut down. I'm sure you all knew that. How many knew that? See, not half of you, no less than half of you. You could not buy a new car. Okay, up until that point, all cars were black anyway. But you couldn't buy a new car. So there was a reason the 1934 Chevys were popular. Okay, they were 1934 Chevys for a long time, until after the war. Why? Because all of the manufacturers of cars now are making Jeeps and trucks and tanks and airplanes. It was an incredible time. And had we lost the war, it might have been the case towards the end of the scenario that the United States of Mississippi, or whatever, had been German to the East Coast and Japanese to the West Coast. And do you think we're making this up? No. The nation was extremely unified and really worked together because the threat was that severe. Well, what would happen after the war ended? There would be a big breath of fresh air, wouldn't there? Almost a release. You're holding the society down, economically, everything's going to the war effort. And, you know, the music at that time was very popular, and the movie theaters were very popular because it was one of the few things that people could do to get away from this war. So as soon as the war was over, it was almost as if a huge spring that was being pressed down just wow, blew up. And all of a sudden, the men came home from the war in the 1950s, the late 1940s and the 1950s. There was the Korean War in there. It was sort of, we took everybody's breath too. There was a tense action, really a war. My other uncle fought in that one. And so all the people coming out of the war, they didn't have much for a long time. Everything was restricted and constricted, etc. So all of a sudden there's just this tremendous growth in the economy, and everybody wants to own stuff. Okay, that was my parents' generation. Everybody worked very hard. They bought homes, they built homes, they bought cars. You could buy cars again. You could buy colored cars, blue, green, yellow. Wow. It was like the end of, you know, it was like, again, peace and finally we're utopia. Well, The whole generation did that. And there was a song that I forget who sang it, Little Houses in a Row, Ticky Tack. I don't know if you've ever heard some of the songs out of that age. And places like Levittown, north of Philadelphia, were very popular. They were springing up all over the United States. All the houses, there was such a boom that all the houses were the same. Hundreds and thousands of them. But they're all the same. Nobody cared because you could get a new house. You could do things. The economy and the country was freedom again, and the war was over. And the generation though that came from these people, they saw their parents try all this. Their parents still got divorces and they were still cranky and still whatever. And the youth generations looked at that and said, you haven't answered anything. So the youth culture of the 60s was a reaction, really was, to the establishment, to the people who thought they were normal. You went to church, everybody was Christian, you built your little houses, you got new cars, you went camping, you played baseball, the war was over, the Korean War, it was a little stress. And this whole youth culture looked at that and said, we don't want that. We don't want stuff. They were looking for meaning and purpose too. Okay? So ever since before the Tower of Babel too, I'm sure, but ever since the Tower of Babel, certainly, you've got the human mind and soul and being trying to find his way without God. And it never stopped. All for the 2,000 years of church history, and even today, we're still going through this cycle. And we assumed that these youth people, these renegades, these lawless ones, finally got in line and capitulated. But they didn't. They didn't. They got tenure at the universities. That's where we are today. The whole education system in the United States is now controlled by and run by the people who really never gave up their value systems. Okay? They don't have to be rebellious because they own and run everything. They run stock market, etc., etc. Last night on TV, I didn't watch TV, but I walked past it and Bev made a comment. She had been watching a little. And this program, Tucker, the new Tucker show, he was going, somebody, I don't know who it was, going after the Democrats because they lie so much. But then I heard another statement by a commentator in the last 48 hours saying, both sides are lying. Well, why? There is no moral guidance compass. Nothing is right or wrong. So it's absolutely right to lie if it brings about the purpose that you want. Yet it justifies means, which was a core element in communism. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with lying. There was nothing wrong with white lies when I was growing up, but now there's nothing wrong with black lies if it accomplishes your purpose. And then where's the trust? There isn't any trust. So you can run for a politician can run for office and make statements, and he doesn't keep those statements. And now it's so common. It is so common. We don't even prosecute it. Almost today, perjury is almost unprosecutable or non-prosecutable. This is the flow of human history. Okay. So you almost wonder, what is the next step? Well, the Christian thinkers have said for a long time, including Schaeffer, that the next step would be, in order to avoid chaos. Okay, you get so much freedom, more freedom, more freedom, more freedom, do anything you want, more freedom, say anything you want, be anywhere you want, free space, all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the very thing you're desiring becomes the very hammer that destroys the whole culture. And then everybody gets worried because you have chaos, you have anarchy. And I perhaps never suspected that commentators of news shows in my lifetime would be using that term. It's out of control, and we're on the brink of anarchy. What is anarchy? Where the government collapses. Now, martial law. Well, how far does martial law go? as many troops as there are. And is the Army going to capitulate and join the other side at times? Yeah, probably would. It's pretty unusual to think that intelligent, common sense men, and I remember this happened at a board of directors meeting one time at Answers in Genesis, we were discussing this, it was about 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And we were discussing how fast this could happen. How fast we could move into anarchy. And I'm sitting with some very intelligent men, at least I respect them, very intelligent men. Businessmen, men out in the marketplace, in the illegal world. And we talked about how fast it could flip, the lake could flip. And I remember one of the men, they were talking, I was listening to them, and one of them said, no, it won't be for at least 2 years. Because if they try it too quick, there are people plotting to do this, to change our country. I think Obama actually, when he said it, I believed him. He was going to transform America. And he had great inroads, made a lot of progress, and a lot of it can't be rolled back. I don't think you can roll some of it back. And why did these men, who were intelligent men, think that it wouldn't happen right away? Because, here was their words, there's so many firearms in the land. We're up to here with guns and pistols, etc., that it would be civil war here in the United States. Personal opinion, it would be squashed by the military. But there would be civil war. There would be civil war. There's still enough. But see, once they have enough education process taking place in junior high school, elementary school, junior high school, and colleges, once that whole culture steeped in that thinking comes into the majority, they don't need to take over militarily. You already own everything. And there's not enough people left to cause any problem. You say, well, why would they want to get rid of our country? It's a good country. No, not to them, it's not. Christianity is a bane, et cetera, et cetera. And so we want a country where there's total freedom to throw off all constraints and to be universal, and ultimately, guess what? To be global. There's an interesting new thought, isn't it? A sarcasm. No, it's not a new thought. It started at Tower of Babel. One world government. Okay? Globalism. If there's any characteristic that I could now already look back, only 6 months later at President Obama, it was he was a globalist. Going to other countries and apologizing for our superiority. Why? What was he trying to do? He was trying to make us to come down to everybody's on the same level. So you can't have globalism, one world movement, until everybody's on the same level. If somebody's superior, you're always going to have a problem. So Trump is, you can see why they are fighting this guy. They're trying to, I believe they're trying to destroy him. I think they're actually trying to destroy him. Why? Because he's the old school of excellence and nationalism. I mean, one of the things people voted against him for is because he was a nationalist. They called him a fascist, a nationalist. Hitler was a nationalist. I don't think he was a fascist, but he's a nationalist. He believes in America. He wants to make just a statement is driving these people crazy. They want to make the world great. Why? Because there is a very powerful, this is my opinion, there's a very powerful force in the universe that is pushing to bring all men together. Who is that? It's Satan. Through Nimrod, he tried it at the Tower of Babel. He's been doing it ever since. Every so often the head of this monster comes above the water. Every time you see one nation trying to take over the whole world, what do you smell? Babylon. That's what you smell. to take over the whole world. Okay? I mean, you sit and think as a common sense person. I've done this. These guys are crazy. Why do they do this? Why aren't they happy with their own little territory and being their own little king? No, there's something that's driving them to want to take over everybody else. Do you ever think about it? How crazy that is? No, it's not crazy. It's Babylon. Babylon. Come, let us gather together. Come, let us gather together. What is the classic symptoms of the Antichrist? What is the classic symptom of the Antichrist? Run the whole world. There's going to be wars in the future. Even during the tribulation period, where he'll wage war against nations that won't voluntarily join him, so he can conquer the whole world. And God is going to let him flower, come into full flower, this whole thing started back there. I believe this. I really do. That's my view. You might have yours. So, Trump is trying to take us back to a exceptionalism of our country, and the middle part of the country, more still influenced by the Christian consensus than New York, Washington, Boston, California, Washington State, and Oregon. They're very much influenced by that motif. And so there's this huge conflict in our country today. I think we're in a respite period, but we are not going to win this. That's my prediction. How do I know that? Because the Bible tells us what's going to happen next. So we see these successive translations take place as thought processes take place. And you say, now watch carefully. I know I'm overseeing, but that's my job here at school. You say down here at the end, when you have a man who is going to become a literal character, a figure, some are trying to classify what is characteristic of him. Is he going to be part Jewish or Jewish himself? Some think so. Why? Because that would be the truest form of the counterfeit, that the Antichrist would be a Jew who was anti the real Christ. Nevertheless, whoever he is and whenever he is, and people have always speculated who he is or where he is. And by the way, people have made predictions about these 10 nations and who the Antichrist is, and many times those predictions fail. And you know what that does? That brings about a whole segment of Christianity that says, see, that view is wrong. No, don't fall for that. Just because people make predictions that turn out to be wrong doesn't mean that the principle or the way they're reading the scriptures is automatically wrong. Matter of fact, Jesus prophesied that, didn't he? Many will say, I've already come, false prophets have come, don't believe them, because when I come back it's going to be such that you will not be able to be misled. So you ask yourself the question, how could you possibly bring about, I mean this is so illogical, bring about a cultural / religious scenario in the world, not just the United States or Western Europe, in the world where everyone would be willing to come together under one banner. The banner of a man who is claiming to be God himself, using power and technology to claim that he has now finally arrived at this place of superiority over other human beings, which is nothing but now the claim of evolution coming true and the claim of what they tried back there at the Tower of Babel to become what? God, to get to heaven. How could you possibly bring everybody together? Well, first of all the religions of the world have the same elemental core values that came from Babel. So while we think there are great differences, there is great similarity. Second, you have developed internationally a view about truth. So that now truth is what you want it to be, you choose it. Now I'm going to get into this deep in the next 2 days. Truth is whatever you want it to be, postmodernism. But now wait, hold it, that's not enough. But now you're going to evolve to a new concept of postmodernism, which moves from you, whatever you believe is truth to you. Now wait, catch this. This is what we think is going to happen. The next step of postmodernism, liberalism, modernism, postmodernism, a new whatever-ism, where truth isn't just what you want it to be, but now, watch, whatever you project and choose as a culture to become true, collectively, becomes the truth. Literally becomes truth. Here there's no literal truth. But now we're going to actually start projecting what we want to be true, and we have the ability to do it. That flows with evolution thinking. There is a new style of evolution thought out there. Okay? Punctuated equilibrialism. Stephen Gould and others. A strain of that, I'm not sure it's exactly the same personally, but it's a strain of it, that says that evolution has been taking slow paces and changes for centuries and eons of time, but maybe it's possible for evolution to take place in huge leaps at a time. That's what Stephen Gould taught in New York. Remember I talked about earlier in the fall, I gave you that to start with? So that all of a sudden a whole culture, look it up here. This is mystical, this is New Age, this is guru, but there are many evolutionists who now believe this. That if all of us human beings, or a good part of us human beings, all somehow came theoretically and mystically to the same conclusion, mentally for example, culturally at the same moment, the whole culture could take one huge step and become something totally unique as human beings. Now think about this for a minute. You used to be animals, and then evolution slowly took you from non-intelligence through the animal process, and look how intelligent you are now. Can you imagine evolution taking place, if evolution is true, for another 10 billion years? Can you imagine how intelligent our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be? Okay, that's pretty simple logic. Evolution is making that prediction. If we don't kill ourselves first. If evolution is saying you started as slime and you are now this today, then can you imagine what we're going to be in, more billions of eons of time? What if it's true that we could collectively think and reach a critical mass, and all of a sudden these massive changes that are going to take place over billions of years in a slow process would take place immediately? From a secular view of religion, we could become gods compared to what we are now. Okay? Now this may be new to some of you. How is this new? This is what they're thinking. This is what the avant-garde people are saying. If evolution is logical, I think it's totally logical. If evolution can take place through slow, gradual processes of DNA changes over a period of time by chance, with more chance, a big amount of chance, they can all take place in one moment. And all of a sudden we're gods. The equivalent of what we would think today as being gods. Okay? So, some of this guruism, some of this humming and at solstice, some of this desire to get in touch with channelers, the spirit world, which is going to lead us in these changes, etc., and give us this insight. And all you have to do is have a world that's so chaotic and so much ready to come apart at the seams that, as Schaeffer and others say, even in the United States on a small scale, if the country starts dissolving, if the country starts heading into chaos and anarchy, we will all be willing to give up our freedoms to hold and maintain society for our own security. We'll give all kinds of freedoms. Go, give all your guns away, guys. Give them all away. Why? Because we're going to kill each other. We are killing each other right now. There'll be warfare in the streets. So, almost always, in a society that comes to that point, this has been true all the way along, the next step is totalitarianism. of some form. Schaeffer says it won't be one man necessarily. I think he's wrong. I think it's the Antichrist. Worldwide, it would be the Antichrist. But in one country dissolving, it could be just an elite group. And everyone will willingly give up their freedoms. If you go back just 10 years ago with Bush, the big issue was the Patriot Law, which gave the government more right to get into your telephones, etc. Why do you think that was such a, why do you think there was so, the old people like me, why do you think there was so much upsetness about that? As I coined that word. Because it was seen as a step towards the potential of totalitarianism. Because the government would have powers now, but we were willing to do it. Why? Not to, what was the towers? 10/11. In order to keep ourselves safe, we were willing to give up freedoms. Okay? And the government passed the law. And now it came up for redoing, and it was a big issue again. Why? Because there are a lot of conservatives say, don't you see where this is headed? They aren't Christians, but culturally they still have understanding of the flow of history, and they say, don't you see where this is headed? So I think worldwide it's going to be a natural product to have an Antichrist, because the whole world's going to be in chaos. And when the whole world starts heading towards chaos, so many people, so much military, so many atomic bombs, so much chaos, so many people dying of starvation, so much tension all over the world, so many things that we're dealing with right now, that somebody comes along and says, I have an answer. Now, why will people fall for that? Because a good segment of the society listening to him is already thinking in this new postmodern, post-postmodern terms of as he's proposing to us our answers. If we all get together, we can now make this come about. So while people today might think that there's no such thing as a literal Antichrist, all you have to look around and see what Satan has done to the mentality and the thinking processes of the world's population. You say, well, they haven't done it yet to the Far East. They're still very religious. No. That's what Ravi's going to show us. The Far East has already been ahead of us by centuries on this idea of the law of non-contradiction doesn't exist and there's no such thing as ultimate truth. Over half of the world is already there through Buddhism and Hinduism. Now we're going to take the West, which comes out of the Christianity concept, which thought there was right and wrong for a long period of time, and thought there was the law of non-contradiction, and now we alter this part of societies and cultures of the world, and now they're both on the same level, thinking the same way. All the time they assume they're different. If you want to see an illustration of this, I say this. Now you think I'm weird and I'm crazy. Well, what I'm saying, I thought I would think, I believed it most of my life, but I would have assumed to say this out loud would be crazy just 15 years ago. That's what I said about the board members talking about this way. This would have been absurd thinking 10 years ago. No one would even mention it. That would have been so crazy. And now, it's not crazy anymore. Even secular people are saying. Okay. So, as I look at this whole scenario, that's why I still think we're very, very close to the end. What is that going to mean for me as a Christian? What is it going to mean for you as a Christian? What is it going to mean for our grandchildren? For Clay? For Case? What's it going to mean for them? What kind of a world are they going to face? This is not a happy time. You can put your head in the sand like an ostrich. You can do what Hezekiah did. And hey, at least the judgment of God isn't going to come in my lifetime. I'm 72. It probably won't happen in my lifetime. Whoa. How do you feel about it if I said that to you? What do I think you are, chopped liver? What a stupid statement. No wonder Manasseh came on the scene. What's such evil? So, we keep looking to the hope. And this is another interesting thought about apologetics and sharing the gospel evangelism. Some Christians adopt the idea, well, I hope it gets worse really quick and really bad so we finally get to the second coming of Christ. Do we really want that attitude? Think about it. Would that not be self-fulfilling then? Because the salt is supposed to retain and hold back. Remember what Jesus talked about the salt? And whoever you think the restrainer is, the Bible talks about the restrainer will be taken away, and then this whole thing will flower. Well, the debate is, who's the restrainer? Is it the Holy Spirit? Is he the restrainer? Is the restrainer the preaching of the gospel? Is the restrainer the church? Does the rapture take the church out, and now this whole thing is released to go cancerous and putrefy quickly like rotten meat because the salt is taken out? Some think that's true. Some think it's the Holy Spirit that's restraining everything. I'm not sure. It's a difficult question. And I'm not going to give you the answer because I can't, perhaps, but I'll give you some opinion. I don't think it's the Holy Spirit because the rapture takes place and the Holy Spirit's still here. Tremendous outpouring of the Spirit of God during the tribulation period and people finding Christ. So it might be the rapture. Let's move away from that for now. You've already looked at that. So we have this idea of, oh, okay, well, we want it to happen quick, then we finally get to the return of Christ. I don't think Jesus wants us to have that attitude. He told us to occupy. It's a military term. Occupy until they come. Hold the fort. Advance. Do what you can to influence the culture, even though you know eventually it's going to get chaotic. That's not our. We don't want to join the evil forces to help bring it about. Right? All right, but my goodness. But that's okay. This is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to gain this perspective. And Schaeffer says that there will be an age, and there is an age, of personal peace and affluence. Man lives in an isolation due to his desire to be left alone and have what is his. What is the end result, young people? You ready for this? Any scriptures come to mind? What did Jesus predict at the end times? A lack of love, a lack of compassion. Children will turn against parents, and men's hearts will grow cold. Okay? When you start linking the prophecies that Jesus gives in the New Testament and Book of Revelation 2, you begin to get this picture. Well, what is men's lawlessness? The age of lawlessness. The Thessalonians, you have these verses. Lawlessness. What is lawlessness? A complete rejection of the law, the truth of God, in the age of lawlessness. Can it last? It can't. It brings death. Cultural death. Corporate death. Physical death. Individual physical death to mankind. So this is personal peace and influence. Sounds like a nice term, but it's not. Okay. The next one, naturalism. Take a break soon. Naturalism, nature is the whole show. You already had these, as you're putting in notes maybe more officially so we can quiz you on this later. Naturalism, the whole show. Verificationism. Verificationism is the scientific method of testing facts for truth, to verify something. Why maybe don't you hear so much about verificationism today? Why? Because there isn't any truth to verify. Truth is an elusive creature and it doesn't exist in absolute form. But verificationism, for your own information, is the scientific method of testing facts for truth. The next one. You okay? I don't want to go too fast. Evidentialism. Evidentialism. To observe particulars in order to generalize. This almost sounds like Pastor Don's view of taking the data, the individual pieces of data, and coming to the big picture to generalize. Okay? Evidentialism is more of a thought process to try and find the truth, to observe the particulars in order to come to general truth. Okay? I think a danger of evidentialism is to assume that what you're coming to in your general statements is true, that that's the ultimate goal, that's a good goal, but to come to that just simply because, but the danger is you can be making mistakes in observing the particulars. So your generalization can be false. So in my view, both of them have to function, they have to co-function in my view, to come to the whole picture of God, the whole counsel of God. Because if I interpret the data incorrectly, I'm not going to come to the whole counsel of God, the big picture. So in order to maintain what I would hope would be a good view of the world, a unified worldview, I'm going to have particulars functioning, they're alive and well, and they're coexisting and functioning with the whole picture. There's a check and balance there. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, I think we had a report on this, didn't we? In a nutshell, in a boil it down, right course of action is that which brings the greatest good. Meaning the greatest good to the greatest number of people. Or the greatest good to the world. In environmentalism, utilitarianism associated with environmentalism would be that we got to get rid of some human beings. We got to control population because for the future good of the human race and the future good of all life, pantheism, okay, that all life is God, we've got to control this planet because everything will be destroyed. So you can see how that starts affecting isms. Okay? Hedonism, the chief goal of man is the pursuit of pleasure. The chief goal of man is the pursuit of pleasure. Hey, if this all there is, and you can see it everywhere, even little funny statements like, you go to a restaurant and somebody says, you eat dessert, come on, eat dessert first. Why? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. We may die before we get to the dessert, so eat the dessert first. That's a philosophical statement, young people. Okay, I mean, it's cute, it's fun. We know what it's meant by because we all love dessert. Okay, but philosophically, you eat dessert first. You push off work and struggle and pain as far as you possibly can push it away. Look at our culture today. We're all trying to, why isn't there so much emphasis? All these doctor shows, Dr. Oz and everybody, and all these websites, eat the right vitamins and do this and exercise. What are we trying to do? We're trying to live forever. That's something that was lost in the garden. Doo-doo-doo. See, I really think I have a unified worldview. Everything goes back to God and the rebellion of Him. I see it everywhere around me. Okay, hedonism, chief goal of man, pursuit of pleasure. All right, we're going to look at liberalism next, but not right yet, and then modernism and postmodernism, and we're going to go through that and try and understand those. But we'll save that for this point in time. Let's take a 10-minute break and come back and watch a video and see if you can get that one page now from G.K. Chesterton. I really want you to have it in your hand. And maybe I should ask Sarah, could we quickly run this? Does anybody have it right now in front of you?
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to read it on the computer because you don't have your computers. Could we maybe run off 18 copies quick, Sarah, maybe? Think of somebody. Okay, come back in 10 minutes.
Okay. Do we have enough paper?
That's so
That was so funny.
Definitely. At least I hope and I pray, dear Jesus. Thank you. Like, yes, I know that we're equal, but he gave us different roles, different jobs, designed us differently. If she's good enough and if she's better enough, then she should. No! That's not the point. Why did you do that? Why were we stupid? In most cases, women are going to be better than a lot of things, okay? Let's be real. But that doesn't justify the women having that type of leadership position. Not right, Johnson.
Thank you.
My dad, mom, and sister.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my dad will be coming on Tuesday, and then mom.
Of next week?
Yeah.
Very
And then
cool.
Mom and Christy will be coming into the airport on Wednesday.
Okay.
And I asked Dad, what airport?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, north of town. And I'm like, what town? You're going to be in Fort Collins, but then you're coming to Jackson. Are you talking
It's
There's
a
a
big
big
difference between those two towns.
Yes.
Aww. Are they gonna stay here in one of the guest rooms, or do they have a hotel?
Dad is driving from Michigan with the RV. So Mom and Dad will be in the RV.
That's nice, yeah.
And then, I think Dad was talking to Dawn about places for Micah and Anna and Christy to be.
Okay. Cool.
So I think Tash and Dawn might be putting Micah and Anna up in the trailer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
And then I don't know where Christy, if she's gonna go in with like
Yeah,
RV or
sure.
if there's room in like a staff house or something. I don't
Right,
know.
right, yeah.
But I think that's what
Oh,
Tash was.
cool. Aw.
Not sure though.
Be fun that they're coming a little early.
Mhm. Not entirely sure
What they're gonna do
I'm
with
not
themselves.
in
Yeah.
charge of that.
Yeah.
I hadn't passed it on to the dog.
Yeah. Oh. I haven't heard if anybody else has family coming early. But a lot of times that happens. That's why we try to like have at least Thursday and Friday fairly clear so that people can go do stuff with their families if they want or whatever.
Yeah. Can we stay here Sunday night?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sundays, like, I think the schedule says that's the last night in dorms, you know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But at that point, we can leave if we want to.
Yeah, you know, graduation's on Saturday, so you could leave, even Saturday night if you wanted, but I mean, it'd probably be a late.
Cause I think our family is planning on leaving after church
On
on Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. I know a lot of people usually do, just because they want to get on the road and start driving,
Yeah.
you know. But some people stay till Monday.
Yeah. I don't exactly know the plan, but they want to go to Yellowstone on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
And so we might go, just like continue driving from there,
Oh,
but we
sure.
might come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then stay
Yeah,
Saturday
just
night.
depending on.
Is the park gonna be open by then?
Certain parts, like you can get to Old Faithful, I'm pretty sure, right?
I think so, because that's what we were planning on doing.
Uh-huh.
I think
Yeah.
that's what Leah told us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we start probably Tuesday. We tear apart the dorms and start getting them. Add more bunk beds and that kind of thing, get it set up for summer.
Tuesday after your graduation?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's why we have everybody out by Monday night for sure. We can start switching everything over. Because then we have the crew, Campus First Aid group comes in like 20-something. July. Yeah. So.
Gotta turn things over.
Supposing I was here till Wednesday, like just in Jackson, could I set up a tent over there?
That'd be a question for Holly, I guess.
Okay.
See you, nerds.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what the other guy did. I assume you like that. Oh, okay.